Good evening, Chandrakala ma'am. Can we start the session?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening, Mangi ma'am. Good evening, Dana ma'am.
Right. Thank you.
Good evening, Ishwari ma'am.
Good evening, Sangeeta. Nice
How
to
are
see
you,
you.
ma'am?
Yeah, doing good.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dana. Congratulations, Dana. Heard you are the principal in charge. You have to unmute
Dana
yourself.
has to unmute.
Dana ma'am.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Dana, you have.
Dana ma'am.
You're able to hear me, ma'am?
Yeah, very well.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, all of
Dana.
you. Very happy to see you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm also
Waiting to see you,
happy to meet the
actually.
new principal in charge.
Ma'am, no. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. All of you. Very happy to see you, ma'am.
Yeah. Who is that principal in charge? I
Ma'am.
can see Chandrakala here. I can see.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Chandrakala.
Very happy to see you, ma'am.
Yeah. Who is that principal in charge? I can see Chandrakala here. I can see.
Good
I
evening,
can
ma'am.
see Chandrakala. Others, I don't know. Vadivu is here. No, I think I can see Vadivu. I mean, she hasn't.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you, ma'am?
Yeah, good, Vadivu. I can see.
Happy to see you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also happy to see all of you. Vadivu is here. No, I think I can see Vadivu. I mean, she hasn't.
Good evening, ma'am.
I
How are
can
you?
see Uma Devi also. I can see a nice youthful Uma Devi picture. I'm also happy to see all of you. Vadivu is here. No, I think I can see Vadivu. I mean, she hasn't.
Good evening, ma'am.
I
How are
can
you?
see Uma Devi also. I can see a nice youthful Uma Devi picture.
Shall we start with the session, ma'am?
Yes.
Good evening, ma'am.
Ma'am, shall I know?
Okay.
Yes.
I can see a nice youthful Uma Devi picture.
Evenings or life's way of saying that you're closer to
the
your
session.
dreams.
Yes.
A warm
Ma'am,
good
shall I-
evening to one and all present here. We cordially invite you all on behalf of management, Department of Chemistry, or life's way of saying that Research Department of Biochemistry and IQSC Bhaktavaksharam Memorial College for Women, Chennai, to this national webinar on analytical chemistry, the pillar of nuclear technology. National Energy Conservation Day is observed every year on December 14. The day is organized by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, is an Indian government organization created in 2001 that is responsible for promoting energy efficiency and conservation. This organization focuses on making people aware of global warming and climate change and promotes efforts towards saving energy resources. Conserving energy is the first step towards a sustainable, greener, and most importantly, healthy future. However, energy conservation is attainable either by using energy more expeditiously or by reducing the amount of service usage. Most of the energy sources we use today are non-renewable. That is why National Energy Conservation Day in India is celebrated to aware people of the importance of energy as well as saving of conserving more energy by using less energy. Conservation is a state of harmony between men and land. A day without prayer is a day without blessing, and a life without prayer is a life without power. Now, I request Ms. Satyashri, 2nd BSc Chemistry, to invoke with a prayer song.
Good evening, all. Gananayakaya Ganadevakaya Ganadakshyaya Dhimahi Gunashariraya Gunamanvitaya Ganeshanaya Dhimahi Gunadityaya Gunadikshaya Gunapravishtaya Dhimahi Ekadandaya Vakratundaya Gauridhanayaya Dhimahi Ganeshanaya Balachandraya Shri Ganeshaya Dhimahi Ekadandaya Vakratundaya Gauridhanayaya Dhimahi Ganeshanaya Balachandraya Shri Ganeshaya Dhimahi.
Thank you, Satyashri. Small cheer and great welcome makes a merry feast. I would now cordially invite Mrs. S. Mangai, Vice Principal, Head, PG and Research Department of Biochemistry, and the convener to present the earnest welcome address.
A very pleasant evening to one and all who have joined the webinar session. On behalf of the Chemistry Department and Biochemistry Department, I extend a very warm welcome to our Chief Guest, Madam Dr. Jayashree Ramkumar, Scientific Officer, G, Analytical Chemistry Division, Baba Atomic Research Center, Mumbai, for kindly accepting our invitation and to give us a lecture on analytical chemistry, the pillar of nuclear technology. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I would also like to place our greetings and gratitude to our Madam Vice Chairman, our Trustee Sir, and our Secretary Sir for their encouragement and support in all our activities. I extend a very warm welcome to our former Principal, Associate Secretary, Dr. C. Anishwari, who had joined us for this session today. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Mangai.
A warm welcome to our Principal in Charge, Dr. K.R. Dhanalakshmi, our IQAC Coordinator, the heads and faculty members of various departments, and faculty members from other institutions, my dear colleagues, and my dear students. Conservation of energy is the need of the hour in the present scenario. Energy conservation is the foundation of energy independence. So this day, 14th December, is observed as National Energy Conservation Day. It is we, the individuals, who should realize and bring about the awareness and changes which would save the environment. Today we have our special guest who would enlighten us on the nuclear technology. As per the words of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, nuclear power is our gateway to a prosperous future. Once again, I welcome you all to this session. Hope you will all have a great, enlighten, which will enlighten you to the nuclear energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. I would now like to invite Dr. N.S. Sangeeta, convener and the head Department of Chemistry, to introduce our chief guest.
Thank you, Chandra ma'am. A very warm good evening to all the dignitaries and our dear participants. It's indeed a great privilege for me to introduce our guest speaker of today's webinar, Dr. Jayashree Ramkumar, a very well-known and one of the most distinguished scientists of India. Dr. Jayashree Ramkumar is presently the Scientific Officer G, Analytical Chemistry Division, BARC Mumbai. Dr. Jayashree Ramkumar joined the BARC Training School Orientation course after doing MSc Analytical Chemistry from University of Madras, Chennai. She joined the Analytical Chemistry Division of BARC after the successful completion of the training school. She has been involved in development of newer separation and analytical methodologies. Her PhD was on the ion exchange and related studies using Nafion membrane. She has more than 65 contributions in international peer-reviewed journals and has chapters in books to her credit in the field of separation science and analytical sciences. She was awarded MANA Fellowship for pursuing her postdoctoral at the National Institute of Material Science, Japan. She is recognized guide of Homi Bhabha National Institute, India. She has been a principal collaborator for BRNS project and departmental nominated coordinator of AERB projects. She is in the editorial board of many journals and also a recognized referee for PhD thesis evaluation for different universities. She has given invited talks in national and international conferences and has also served as chairperson in various conferences. We are very, very, really honored to have you as our invited speaker today, ma'am. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. To be an inspired is greater, but to be an inspiration is an honor. I would now like to invite our speaker, Dr. Jayashree Ramkumar, Scientific Officer, Analytical Chemistry Division, Bhabha Atomic Research Center, Mumbai, to take over the session. Few instructions for the participants before we get started. Dear participants, if you have any doubt during the presentation, we request you to post them into the chat box, which will be answered at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Good evening all. Thank you. I'm really honored and humbled by your introduction, and I hope I stay to your expectation. At the outset, I thank the organizers, especially Dr. Sangeeta. And before proceeding, I would like to congratulate Dhanalakshmi ma'am. I heard you have become my head. So congratulations, ma'am. Nice to hear such good news. And of course, I think Dr. Ishwari ma'am is one of your ex-heads. So my wishes to her also, because teachers play a major role in each one of our lives. This I say in every forum. So with due respect to all of you, I will now start my presentation. Before I go to my presentation, I would like to switch off the video because there's some technical issues. So please allow me to do that. And now I'll share my presentation with all of you. I hope it is visible. Just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
It's visible now. Slideshow.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
It's visible now. Okay, fine. Just a moment. From the beginning. Yeah, okay. Now, as I've been already introduced, I'm from the BARC, Bhabha Atomic Research Center, and I have done my analytical chemistry. So I thought the right topic for this forum will be analytical chemistry, pillar for nuclear technology. But with due respect to other subjects and also other energy forms, I just would like to say that in this talk, I'm not saying one is better or the other is bad. As rightly told by one of the ma'am, we have to go in cohesion with each and every energy forms. So from my side, I'll be just telling you what are the different aspects of nuclear energy. And before I go to my talk, since the audience consists of many students, I thought some of the students may benefit from these kind of information regarding DAE and also about BARC. DAE, as all of you know, is Department of Atomic Energy, wherein you can see it was established in 1954, August 3rd. Quite a long period it has sustained. And if you want to know details about it, the website is open for all of you. You will get further information about this DAE. But coming to what I really want to emphasize on is DAE has got different aspects like research and development sector, aided institutes, industries, public sector, service organization. BRC comes under what is known as the research and development sector. It is one of the units of the different setups, and the one closest to you proximity-wise is the IGCAR or the Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research. I'm sure most of you must be knowing all this, but I'm just for continuity and information for some of you, I'm telling all this. And then when you want to know something in BRC, again, we have an open site, which is http.brc.gov.in. If you go there, you have lots of other segments. Maybe what might interest some of you is the career opportunities. So if some of you are interested, then you can understand that orientation program is one of the programs through which you get into BRC. And I was fortunate to go through BRC to this particular course. So the recruitment of scientific officers, that is scientists and engineers through orientation course for engineering graduates and science postgraduate. As the name says, this is possible only when you do MSc chemistry or physics or biochemistry. Even biochemistry is welcome here. Whereas for engineering graduates, it is just the graduation. The next route is the DAE Graduate Fellowship Scheme. Here they take the MTech. You don't have to worry anything from my lecture. Every details are given in this particular site. And you can also understand what is the criteria for each of the mode of getting it. Last is the KS Christian Research Associate, wherein you join after your PhD. And also after you finish your BSc and you still are looking for a job, there is something called the CAT1 trainee recruitment process. That details also you will get during the, when you search through the website. And then there is one important aspect which I would like to tell most of the research faculty. There is something known as the BRNS application, which they fund. BRNS is basically the Board of Radiation and Nuclear Sciences, wherein they fund relevant research project. So one of the faculty or the researcher will contact a person in DAE, especially BRC or anyway, and make them the principal collaborator. And along with that, you need one co-investigator from your side. So basically, you will be the principal investigator and the person from BRC will be the principal collaborator. So here you will be getting funding according to which you can establish your lab or find out and get new instruments. So with this small introduction, now I'll come to the plan of my talk. As you can see, for maybe the first time, I really have not written any plan. Why? Because I really didn't know how to plan it. With the flow, we all will go together. But of course, I want to start my talk with this beautiful saying of Dr. Homi Bhabha, who is a real legend and I'm sure will inspire many more youngsters. He says, no energy is more expensive than no energy. Just think over these words. Maybe by the end of this lecture, you will really understand how impactful these words were. Because the terms no energy mean two different things when put in the two different places. So think over it. So then what do we do? Well, I thought I'll start with the basic facts which most of us know, starting from energy. I know we all keep saying, today I don't have energy to do this, today I don't have energy to do this. Well, technically, energy just means the capacity to do work. And we use it in our normal language without even realizing that's the definition. And of course, there is a term known as power, which we will not be using in our daily life, but it is the rate of doing work. And this becomes important when you go for actual energy options. And coming to an interesting aspect, the term energy was known as energia, and it was dated as late as Aristotle's work, that is 4th century. So it's not really new, but maybe the terms really were different, as we find that Leibniz was a person who talked about something called visa viva in Latin, which it means a living force. And he gave a formula of mass into the velocity square. Today, we all know this as kinetic energy. So I'm sure we are always surprised and interested to know that such terms existed way back, but they were given proper acknowledgement only with time. And then, as it was said, Thomas Young, he was the first person who used the actual term energy. In 1829, we had Coriolis, the great person who invented the actual term kinetic energy. Of course, he gave the same formula, but the term kinetic energy and potential energy came into vogue after 1829 and 30s. And most importantly, this great physicist, Richard Feynman, he was the one who coined the law of conservation of energy. I'm sure we all have read this law so many times, but it was for the first time he realized that such a law is important to understand the concepts of energy. One more interesting aspect of energy is we all know why CFL bulbs became so popular, because the normal bulbs tend to give more heat than the actual utility. More interestingly, according to Google, the energy it takes to conduct 100 searches on its site is equivalent to a 60-watt light bulb burning for 28 minutes continuously. Now just imagine how many searches we do on Google, maybe within 5 minutes. Well, these are all equivalent to consuming energy without our realizing. One more place where you will all be shocked is 75% of the electricity is used to power our electronics while the products are really turned off. We all hear our parents or elders saying that switch off your laptop, switch off your this, etc. But mind you, they also consume energy. But please don't use my facts and go and tell them, see, ma'am had told me it also consumes energy. Definitely, it consumes some energy, which is much less than what it will be when it is switched on. But what is important to know is, with a lot of technological development, even if there is no use of it immediately, we are still consuming electricity without realizing it. So that is the main point I'm trying to drive to you. And as this cartoon beautifully tells you, with development, the energy required for each sector keeps increasing. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean that there should be no development. It just means that we should be wise enough, because we have to understand certain things. In today's world, more than 5 million megawatt is being produced, and energy demand is increasing 3% per year, which is quite a dramatic increase, and people predict it may be even more later. And right now, India is the fourth largest producer of electricity. There is also an important aspect which measures the development of a country or a nation. That is what is they term as the per capita consumption. In India, it is only 600 kilowatt per year right now, as compared to developed countries, which is more than 10,000. But you should understand one thing, the most important aspect, as rightly told in the introduction of all your teachers, is being wise to conserve. So what is conservation basically? We keep talking conservation, conservation. Well, it is a beautiful word which comes from two Latin words. Con literally means together, not con as making a dupe of somebody, it's being misused, but con in Latin means together. And servare is meaning God. Thus, conservation means to keep together or to guard together. What does it mean? Energy conservation. Whatever energy aspects or resources I have to guard it safely for the future utility. Now, energy conservation effort has to be made to reduce the consumption of energy in two different ways. Either you use the energy more efficiently, go for options which reduce the consumption, and of course, reduce the amount of the service as such you use. So, but then what is the actual importance of this energy conservation? Well, it helps you to become acquainted with what is known as eco-sufficiency. And as rightly told in the introduction, today, 14 December, is known as the National Energy Conservation Day, celebrated since 1991, and it is celebrated by the Ministry of Power. I'm sure you will get all these details in the Google. But the most important thing you should understand why we are doing such a thing is we have to increase our awareness, not only us, but all around us, on the importance of energy, its resources, and which are also depleting, or whichever is better option. And finally, how to conserve. As beautifully told by Thomas Allen, energy conservation is the foundation of energy independence. So we can understand how important energy conservation becomes. And again, this beautiful quote sums up everything. There is no energy crisis, only a crisis of ignorance, which is so rightly said for today's life also. How many of us are really worried about how much wastage occurs? I'm not blaming everyone, but then we all tend to, in the so-called fast life, forget that these small changes from our side can contribute to a longer way. And this year's theme, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, I believe is energy efficient India. So I'm sure with this vote or promise that we all will try to make it better. I'm sure we'll never have to really face energy issues or maybe even try to overcome them. One important aspect, if you see this picture, whether half full or half empty. Normally, this proverb is told to you, look at life in optimistic way, the glass is half full, etc. Fine, these are all good for optimistic talks. But when it comes to our actual resources, it is better to be realistic and understand that the resources are limited and they are really depleting. So we have to all buck up and do something about it. Now coming to a very common topic of energy options. We have what is known as the non-renewable energy resources, or the renewable resources, and finally coming to nuclear energy. I am sure all of us know most of the aspects of these three options. But since I'm talking about nuclear energy, I'll just touch in brief about the first two options. The non-renewable energy, it's not source, it's resources actually. They are the oil, coal, and natural gas. As you can see, oil and natural gas are too valuable to use them as a resource. Why? Because there are other more cheaper options like natural gas. You can use it for cooking and domestic appliances, whereas oil is portable, but it's also expensive for electricity production. Another aspect with oil is how long will this fuel withstand? See, now they say that not only your resources are important, how long is the main question you have to address. But the most commonly used is coal. And we all know that about 38% of the electricity worldwide is still based on coal, one of the unbeatable techniques. But the problem is, again, it will last for only 200 years. So what do we do within that? And most importantly, they say what is known as the emission, toxic emission. Of course, these things all come only when we start facing the problem. So they start always looking for something better option. So that is when we got the renewable energy sources of hydro, solar, wind, and geothermal. Obviously, all of them have their own merits and demerits, and based on the places, you can have each one of them. At this juncture, I just want to mention one thing, that just because one energy option is available, we should not get away with the others. Because energy demand may increase or we are successful in conserving. But the fact is, each one of these technologies are important for us. Like you can see, hydroelectric, solar, wind, they all have no issues of either they are environmentally clean, they don't need any extra force or driving force, but each one of them have certain demerits. Like for example, in hydroelectric, it is where your dam, etc. are there. And they feel that further development may not be possible in these places because whatever was already there has been already used for such production. Solar, well, the initial cost is still high. Weather dependence is a major issue still, and you need large areas of space. So places where there are large spaces, solar panels obviously become more attractive. Wind, again, the weather dependence, it is periodical, not always you have the right type of wind speed. And of course, the most importantly, they say it causes noise pollution. Geothermal is one of a beautiful option, but you don't have hot springs everywhere. So it becomes specific to the location. So you can see each of these techniques has its own pluses and minuses. So what is the main reason to opt for nuclear energy? Well, the first and foremost they thought was about the global warming and also our tendency to decrease our dependence on fossil fuels. Because these fuels, as we all know, may not last forever. And what do we do after that? So they are just looking for an option. This table just shows you a comparison of how much energy will be produced per kilogram of the fuel. And the last row is about fusion. But in this lecture, I'm just restricting to fission because fusion is totally a different chapter and involves an equally large time to be dedicated to it. So I'm not putting it in this. So as you can see till nuclear energy fission, the amount of energy generated per kilogram is much, much higher compared to the other things. Of course, so what do you do if you don't have a facility to keep this U-235 kind of reactor-based system? Well, we cannot get away with other things. Firewood can be used, but not in a greater extent. So this table just shows a comparison of the capacity. And of course, like every technique, it has its own advantages and disadvantages, which we must remember because no technique is free of any disadvantage. Coming to the advantages, no greenhouse gases. They will be, you don't really need very valuable resource like oil or natural gas. Less pollution as there is no zero carbon dioxide emission. It is more efficient. It's reliable. Apart from the initial installation, it becomes cost effective. And right now in India, this technology is quite well developed and India has really mastered it. But disadvantages, there is still a concept of perception of safety issues in people's mind, which has to be gradually removed. And training is very crucial because it cannot be handled by any person unless they are trained. And importantly, the fuel which is spent, what is done to it before disposal. These are issues which are being continuously reformed and taken care of. And mining, sometimes initially when you mine, I'll come to this process in one of the slides, I'll tell you what it is. There, some people have the concern that it may give environmental issues. And general safety if God forbid there is some accident or something, then the general safety issue becomes a concern. Like you have all seen Fukushima examples and all. So we cannot rule out or say there are no disadvantages at all. We have to just take a balance of both. So how did nuclear energy come at all? So I'm just going a bit back in history to just impress upon you that it is not all of a sudden it came. So it had happened in 3 stages. First was the scientific studies by different researchers and scientists who are well known for their discoveries. Then came the World War II. That was when actually the nuclear bomb was tested. Finally, nuclear energy was then used for civil sphere or civilian purposes. This is a list of the people who have really worked in this field. The first and foremost, of course, we all know is the Curie couple who have found out radium. That was the first radioactivity concept which they worked on. So this is the starting of your nuclear energy basis when you understand there's something called radioactive. That was in 1898. Then 1917, it was Rutherford, who's known as a father of nuclear physics, is credited to have split the atoms. Rutherford experiment, we all know that. And he found out the backscattering, the nucleus, etc. Then it was the 2 scientists, Cockfrot and Walton, who used accelerator. Accelerator is nothing but when you push your ions at a very high speed and energy so that the complete breakage of the nucleus is possible. So they did with lithium and they produced 2 helium nuclei. Why are we seeing all this? Like I said, this is the first stage of development. Then, of course, we know Chadwick's name. I mean, the chemistry side people, because he found neutron. And then nuclear fission was then experimentally achieved by Fermi on a small scale. And then Ottenhorn, the famous name, he conducted experiments with the products of a neutron bombarded uranium. He took the products and he was analyzing. So all this put together gave a kind of idea of what was happening. But the very first, before going that, so what is fission? Fission, I think I already mentioned, it's a nuclear reaction in which a heavy nucleus, normally termed as fissile material, is split into 2 or more smaller fragments, releasing a large amount of energy. I'm sure the chemistry and the physics people know about this. And this energy is due to the binding energy. Binding energy is the smallest amount of energy required to remove a particular particle from the atom. So, or it can be the maximum energy which is present in that. Beyond that, it gets excited. And nucleus are made up of protons and neutrons. But we all know that actual mass of a nucleus will be less than the sum of mass of protons and neutrons. This small difference is what is released as the energy as given by the equation, delta mc square, which is known as the nuclear binding energy. If I do this fission in a controlled manner and a chain reaction occurs, which I can operate, or rather the researcher or scientist can operate, then the device is known as a nuclear reactor. And this graph, please don't worry too much about it. It just gives you an idea that elements which are heavier than iron can undergo fission. So up till iron, there will, even if you try to bombard it with neutron, the process of fission and radioactivity doesn't arise at all. So in this equation, when I bombard uranium with a neutron, I get barium, krypton. Two neutrons are again released, which further bombard with further uranium-235. Thus, a chain reaction is occurring. And for every reaction, I get around 200 MeV. What is MeV? Million electron volt. And 1 million electron volt is 10 power minus 13 joule. Thus, 1 joule, to produce 1 joule, I need around 3 into 10 power 10 fissions. Okay, you can do just a simple calculation. And this amount of energy of 1000 megawatt day of heat is given by 1.08 kilogram of the fissile material. And this is equivalent to 2,700 tons of coal. So you can understand the fuel requirement is also reduced. Thus, this is one of the advantages. Before proceeding, I just like to mention to people, like there are two types of radiations, which normally we encounter in such reactions. One is the particulate radiation, wherein we have the alpha, which is nothing but the helium, positively charged helium ions, and beta, this is nothing but the electron. So alpha and beta are the particulate radiation. Electromagnetic radiation, we all know these words. Radio waves can come, UV can come, microwave can come, gamma can come, and X-ray can come. These all generate what is known as heat in the reaction. So when you have a reactor setup, you need something known as the coolant. This is because of these radiations. So now coming to the actual reactor setup. This example of Chicago Pile 1, which I have given here, is the first example of artificial nuclear reactor, which was done based on the experiments of Enrico Fermi. And this is the group of the people who did this experiment, and Enrico Fermi is in the front row. And this entire success of this, he carried out this in his university, Racket's storage house. So it was a very, primitive kind of setup. But the experience and the information led to the major achievement of what is known as the Great Manhattan Project. What was the Manhattan Project all about? It was basically initiated by Albert Einstein. He found out that Germany was going to use nuclear weapon. So he signed a letter known as the Einstein-Sisler letter. He was given permission by Roosevelt in 1941. The countries which participated were USA, UK, and Canada. And the project director was Robert Oppenheim. I'm sure most of us would have seen his photo somewhere. And most importantly, this was such a great project that more than 1 lakh people were involved in it. And it was started in the Los Alamos laboratory. And then what happened? This is where they found out what is known as the thin man and the fat boy. These are the types of bombs which they did. You don't have to worry too much. And this is what they did, used in the Hiroshima, Nagasaki bombings. So this Manhattan Project finally was closed on the 15th August 1947. The army establishment was called as Manhattan Engineering District based on the location. Hence, the project was named as the Manhattan Project. And according to Robert Oppenheimer, who really witnessed the effect of this bomb, he said, "Now I become dead, the destroyer of the world." Such a powerful word, which means that when misused, they really cause a havoc. And we all know about the Hiroshima, Nagasaki bombings. Russia then decided to have its own nuclear power to produce electricity in 1954. So much for the world. But what about India? Well, we all know the great pioneer Homi Jahangir Baba, the legend. He is known as the father of Indian nuclear program. So how did he really get into it? Well, they say destiny, fate, whatever. Same thing happened here. He was born on 30th October 1909. So that is what we celebrate as Founders Day in our department. He was a very wealthy person with a father being a lawyer and mother coming from a wealthy background. And he was related to all the businessmen. But he was interested in doing physics and not engineering. If you read his biographies on the net, he will say beautifully, like he never wanted to become an engineer. And it's very interesting because we always have this confusion with our elders, what we want to do, etc. I'm sure we can all relate with him, but he went ahead, did physics. He went abroad. In September 99, Baba was in India for a brief stay, and that's when the World War II started. Well, it happened to be that he decided not to go to London immediately. He joined in the Indian Institute of Science, headed by Dr. C.V. Raman, another legend. And with the help of J.R.D. Tata, he established the first Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. So this was his first step into this field. Then in 1948, Nehru decided to appoint him as the director of the nuclear program. In 1954, he was awarded with Padma Bhushan. More importantly, when really he took all the importance was, in 1950s, Baba represented India in the IAEA conference and was the president of the conference, wherein they wanted to use nuclear energy for peaceful uses, not for anything. So it is called the United Nations Conference on the Peaceful Uses of Atomic Energy in Geneva in 1955. But in 1958, when the Second Nations Conference was there, he outlined the 3-stage nuclear power program of India. I will just discuss it in the next slide. But in this slide, I just wanted to impress upon you that they had really had the dignitaries like Einstein and all discussing. And this is the actual site before when it was being constructed. And it was named as AAET. And now it is named after Baba as the Baba Atomic Research Center. And earlier it was called the AEET, Atomic Energy Establishment, Crombie. So this is how our old photo of our institute looks like. And of course, this is a beautiful R.K. Lakshman cartoon, wherein it was like Nehru is depicted as a common man riding on a bullock cart of wheels of nuclear. What does it really depict? Well, with limited resources, nuclear energy may propel India into the forerunner. And what happened was the limited resources did not deter Baba and the great visionaries because they had great vision and also determination. And that is what we see today as the great establishment in the DAE. And what is the nuclear program of India? As I said, it's a 3-stage nuclear program. The first stage was, I'll just be a bit technical here, U-235 is fission, as I explained what fission is, and plutonium-239 is generated. So the first stage reactors are all based on this reaction, which produces energy. So you have to just think it is one way of producing energy. You don't have to go beyond it if you're not interested, but just make sure you understand there's such a concept. In the second stage, of course, this PU-239, which is generated in the first stage, will be then used further to make another set of reactors. And finally, in that reaction, you get what is known as U-233. And the final stage was Baba's vision is take this U-233 and operate it along with thorium in what is known as the U-233 thorium cycle and get further reactors with long-lasting sustenance. Why was thorium important? I'm sure we all know that monazite in Kerala, we have tremendous deposits of monazite in the beach. So our aim of visionaries was that India should depend finally on the thorium rather than go for other kind of system. But without the expertise in the first 2 stages, the step to the third stage, as you all know, will be difficult. So we have got expertise in the first completely. Second, they are nearly going to complete, and this will help in the further sustenance. And before going further, I'll just tell you in brief, what are the components of a reactor? People keep saying reactor. Like I said, it's a device wherein you can control the chain reaction and produce energy. So it has got different components like core, which is where the material is kept. Then you have a moderator. It has to slow down the neutron. I'll just come in the next slide what it means. Reflector, it reduces the leakage of neutron, and coolant because of the heat produced. And there are different types of reactors. One is the research reactor. Other is the power reactor. Power reactors are what are used to produce power. In Chennai, you can all be aware of MAPS, Madras Atomic Power Station in Kalpakkam. So that is probably the closest. And of course, with all the news, we have this Kudangulam also. So these are from Tamil Nadu. Probably Chennai people can correlate further. Similarly, there are large number of other power reactors. But what is a research? And finally, fast breeder reactor is also in Kalpakkam, Bhavini as it is called. So what is a research reactor? Well, it differs from power reactor in that it has high neutron flux and is used for basic research sciences, either in physics or in analytical chemistry. I'll tell you how, but I won't explain in detail. And also probably to gain insight to the further other reactor setup. And the purpose is facilitate basic and applied research, isotope production, which is very important for different types of treatment, and study fuel fabrication, irradiation testing, etc., and develop processes for safety management. Because whenever you're going to actually have a reactor built in a larger scale, we need to take care of all these aspects. So such research reactors give us a first-hand feel of how it is, and they are operated at very low power, so we don't have real disastrous effect, even if it is going to be shut down or if there's a problem. Luckily, till now, BRC and India has got such a tremendous knowledge that they have been operating successfully, and this technology is well known in India. And there are 5 research reactors in India. The first one is, of course, you all have heard of most of the name. It is the Apsara reactor. It was attained criticality. Of course, the words are so strange, but this is the word they decided to use. Criticality is when it starts functioning or like commissioning, you can say, but the term used is criticality. And that was in 4th August 1956. It was permanently shut down on 2010. You can see the number of years of performance, and upgraded Apsara has come in its place. The most beautiful aspect is this is into the, when you see, there is a blue kind of a swimming pool arrangement. And this is created by what is known as the famous Cherenkov radiation. Because these radiations were so beautiful, the name Apsara was given by then PM Jawaharlal Nehru. So that is how the name Apsara was given to this reactor. Then the other reactors, Cyrus, it was criticality was on 1960, and after 50 years was shut down in 2010. And Durva reactor attained criticality in 85, and it's still running and catering to most of the application studies. And this is a critical facility again for further studies in other reactors of AHWR. AHWR is nothing but advanced heavy water reactor, which is the dream in the 3rd stage of the nuclear power program. Of course, there were other reactors like the Purnima 1, 2, 3, but right now, as you can see, they were all shut down after a particular number of years. Power reactors. There are 21 nuclear power reactors with a total capacity of 5780 megawatt. And I'm just showing in this map, you can see how well spread they are. You can see Kodangulam here, Kalpakkam maps here, and Rawatbata, Kakrapara exactly. So you can see there are like 21 operating nuclear power plants right now. When it is giving power, we term it as nuclear power plants, or it can be also called as nuclear power reactors. Most important aspect of where chemistry or where we cannot play a role is in this fuel cycle. India has decades of what is known as the closed fuel cycle. See, when you see this particular figure, I'll just explain. This is where the first step of mining comes, wherein you take the ore of your radioactive material. This is what I said, when you do mining in a particular place, there may be some environmental issues which we have to deal. Remember in the previous slide I had told, so that is the mining. So mining, milling, etc. Then you go to conversion, then all those processes are there. Fuel fabrication. Finally, this is your power plant or your research reactor. Either you can produce electricity, or you can do other radioisotope production, etc. Then you have what is known as spent fuel, because it will not be completely burned out. So you have to take care of that also. And then finally you do what is known as reprocessing, and you get what liquid waste here, normally known as HLW. So this kind of cycle wherein we reprocess our waste is known as the closed fuel cycle. Why India adopts this? Because it wants to have a sustainability in nuclear power, and also it is worried about its resources. And also there is an advantage, your waste doesn't go out and is safe for public also. So this is known as a complete closed fuel cycle. And now nuclear fuel cycle, as I said, is ample opportunity for the use of analytical chemistry. in terms of separation and analysis. I'm sure even with this figure, you could understand, like if I have to reprocess, that means I have to do a lot of separation. Before separation, I may be required to analyze. Similarly, before making a fuel, the raw materials need to be separated or even analyzed. So this is what the scope of analytical chemistry. Of course, with due respect, let me tell you, every branch of chemistry has its role. But whichever branch of chemistry you do, whether you analyze data or whether you analyze a spectra, finally it is your analytical capability which plays an important role. Hence, I said analytical chemistry has lots of scope in these studies. And as you can see, the role of analytical chemistry from this beautiful book of Clement J. Rodin. Maybe this was the first book we were told to read when we entered BMC. It's an analytical chemistry of the Manhattan Project. There, they really discuss in detail about the complexation of uranium, thorium. I mean, you get all sorts of species of uranium, etc. It actually makes you wonder how much knowledge is there in this small book. It's in fact like a book which can clear off most of your doubts if you are working in this kind of area. And of course, before going further, I'll just in brief tell what is analytical chemistry. One of my favorite ways of explaining. Analytical chemistry is the art and science of getting insight into what? It can be either the characteristics of the sample or the process or even the data. So I have just left it as getting insight into. So how can the analytical issues be addressed? Well, it is based on what species you want to measure, what is the precision of the measurement, and for that, what technique you have to use, and is separation necessary? These are the 4 important issues. And as an analytical chemist, what does an individual have to know? He has to know which technique has to be used, what is the strength and weakness of each technique. Why I say this is, see, many people tend to think, oh, I have this particular instrument A, so I will do everything on that. No, anybody who does analysis will know that each level of amount will have a different technique to it. So that is what it means, the strengths and weakness of the technique. And also whether the reaction is going to be a heat producing or requires heat, like endothermic, exothermic. These are the aspects you have to understand. And finally come to the error analysis, because your analysis is going to be the foundation for further reaction. Hence, these are important aspects which an analytical chemist has to do. And of course, analytical chemistry, we have these 2 famous words, quantification and qualification. And this is a good proverb to understand. Quantification without qualification is irrelevant. I won't know unless I know what is there, what is the use of measuring, how will I measure? So it doesn't exist at all. Only by knowing some particular species A is there and not telling me the quantity, I won't know whether it is useless for me or I can't do anything. So it's inaccurate. And of course, how many more minutes I have? I'll try to finish fast, okay? And of course, there are 2 types of analysts. One, the analyst who regularly uses well-known techniques and well-known procedure. Research analyst, he tries to develop new methods. Why I am giving all this brief introduction is, I will just be touching upon 1 or 2 examples of interest to you. Finally, the 2 important studies of analytical chemistry will be separation and sensing. So as I've already said, we have to determine and separate. And so how do we use in nuclear technology? We use analytical chemistry for analysis of various components, also develop some new methods to improvise these techniques. So what is interdisciplinary? This is actually a fuel cycle, and working with the fuel cycle is a perfect example wherein different experts come together to solve a problem. This is just in brief about the interdisciplinary aspect of this studies. And so coming to our work, first I will tell you how we use analytical chemistry for analysis of important components. Nuclear reactors operate under harsh conditions. So each component, starting from the fuel, etc., should have proper stringent specification. What do you mean by stringent? The specification cannot vary more than 2 to 5%. Okay, so it has to be very accurate. So I have to really accurately find out how much is there. And if these specifications are not followed, then the entire system will collapse. So avoid that. We understand analytical chemistry plays a major role. And we do purity check of the reactor components. This is a well-known technique of ion chromatography. I will not explain the details of the technique. I'm just telling you how this technique, which is a separation and identification technique, used to analyze most of the components of a reactor. In this first column, sample, if you see, you have different examples like boron carbide, graphite, etc. These are all different components which are used in a reactor, and their purity check becomes very important. Please don't worry about the other columns. I'm just telling you how a simple technique is used to analyze important samples like this. And we get regularly such samples for analysis of specific ions, because such ions can become detrimental or dangerous to the characteristic of this material. Hence, ion chromatography is used. Another aspect, of course, I'll not go into this, is determination of an important species, carbon, in a uranium fuel. Because what they say is, if carbon is present in this, it will change the metallurgical property of uranium, and therefore this becomes an important regular analysis. It's not a R&D, it is a regular analysis technique which is happening to identify how much carbon is present. And the range, as I say, they give the range of between what to what it should be. Because more than that, then that particular uranium cannot be made into the form of a fuel. Now coming to some research and development, I will not bore you too much. I will just give you one or two examples. We all saw that fuel is an important aspect of nuclear energy. We have something known as the mixed oxide fuel, wherein they have both plutonium and uranium together. What happens is, when they do this fuel fabrication, or rather making of the fuel, there are different stages because they have different types of fuel. And in every step, analytical determination plays a major role. And normally what happens, the conventional method, what they do, if analytical chemist, he will try to dissolve it in solution and then analyze by a technique. But if I have to do in every step and for every fuel sample, it becomes difficult. So what they do, because the process is slow and you have to use dedicated instruments, a lot of disadvantages. So they use what is known as alpha autoradiography. I'm just coming how it is. It is a very simple film. Okay, and this is called the CR39 because it's a Columbia resin 39. Please don't worry about the formula and all. This is the film. It is a transparent film. And for the information, it is the same film which can be used in your eye lens also. So basically, this film has got nothing to do with radioactivity at all. It is a normal lens which you can hold in your hand. But how is this used? Well, what they do is, when your alpha particle from my fuel hits this film, it forms what is known as the track. And this track is measured. That's all you have to understand. This track is measured. And this SSNTD is what is known as the solid state nuclear track detectors. So when my film is used for determination of my fuel, it is termed as a solid state nuclear track detector. And this is a very simple technique and etc. These are the advantages. But what you should understand is, see, this is a typical procedure they follow. This is your film. You hit it with the alpha particle. You don't even have to use the technical term of irradiation, but of course I will use it. When the alpha from the source falls on the film, it will have some changes, but that is not seen by naked eye. So they have to immerse it with some strong alkali, and they find these kind of changes occurring on the actual film. So what I showed in the previous film as being a transparent film now becomes a bit kind of a hazed film. This hazed portion, they normally use optical image analysis and they do their calculation. In our studies, as an alternate simple thing, we used a simple spectrophotometer and took its UV visible spectra, rather only the UV spectra, and tried to analyze the similar thing and found out how much plutonium is there in the fuel samples. And we found that amount of plutonium in the mixed oxide fuel samples could be easily found using a calibration curve. And then without going further, I'll just tell you, the same system could be used to find out whether my sample is homogeneous or heterogeneous. What does this mean? See, when they make a mixed oxide, they just mix the two oxides, that is uranium and the plutonium oxide, physically under a ball milling or something. Ball milling is nothing but wherein they just churn it like a pounding, like we do our masalas. They just pound it in a bigger setup. So they don't heat and all. So they have to check whether the fuel is made homogeneous. Homogeneous means it should be spread in evenly in all direction. And our technique, we could find that one procedure gave us a good sample, while another procedure termed C. I'm not going to details of the procedure. I'm just telling you how we are helping in evaluating the fuels. Gave us the link that there is a lot of heterogeneity. Therefore, we can find that there is a heterogeneous distribution. And you can all understand it is just using a simple UV visible spectroscopy. We have not used any hi-fi standard. And when we get these films for analysis in our lab, believe me, there is no activity. So it is very safe to use. I mean, I don't have to worry about getting irradiated myself because they have taken all the care before they send it to us for analysis. So this is the first step wherein you can use a simple spectrophotometry for analyzing your plutonium fuels. Because normally when we say plutonium, etc., people always feel maybe we cannot handle it. But it is not always that scary. Proper care is always taken. The next analysis is, of course, you using iron and uranium. Iron is another impurity which is to determine in uranium. We have developed a simple method with the flow injection system. I've just given it in this slide, but please don't worry. It is just that a pump is there. Through it, a solution goes through. My sample is injected. Sample is nothing but iron in uranium. This method is, of course, destructive. You have to bring it to solution. So we have to make a solution of uranium containing iron in its matrix. And then we use a detector and we measure the output. So we use different technologies like using colored species. And we have found that xylenol orange is a very important and simple chromophoric agent which helped us to determine very low concentrations of iron in presence of uranium. This is another example wherein analytical chemistry can be used for analysis of your system. Now coming to separation, as I had already told you, separation is an important aspect. Thorium-uranium separation is bound to be important when HWR comes to bear. So with this in mind, we try to have some ways and use two different kinds of aspects known as sorption using different solvents. And what we did was, we had this kind of solvent. And what is sorption? Sorption is nothing but whatever you do with activated charcoal. You have activated charcoal, you pour water containing colored species, the water coming out will be colored. So however, that experiment, instead of charcoal, if I use different specific solvents, I get high selectivity for with respect to the interest of my species. And these are all the experimental parameters which really you have to do each time when you do the studies. And then we use simple glass. This is what this slide shows. Boroaluminosilicate glass to remove thorium from uranium. And it was a very simple experiment which we did for the first time and we published. And we also understood the glass composition played a role. So all this scientific part was just to impress upon you that analytical chemistry has a very important role to play. And as a spectrophotometry method can be developed, flow injection techniques can be used, and sorption can also be used to bring out these separations. But in general, what is there? I would like to say role of analytical chemistry is very strong in all aspects of nuclear fuel cycle. And there is something called the front end and the back end of the cycle. Front end and back end, as the name says, you can understand, with reactor in between, whatever comes before going to the reactor, that is from milling, mining, etc., are the front end, and whatever comes out of the reactor and then later on the reprocessing, etc., are the back end. So they play a very important role in both the ends of the cycle. And last but not the least, energy conservation is the only key of the future. That is why we always think of having sustainable options and how to improvise those options. And again in this, I like to quote my legend, Homi Baba. I inspired by him more after joining. My success will not depend on what A or B thinks of me. It depends upon what I make of my work. And surely you will all agree with me, he was most successful Indian we could ever think of. And last but not the least, I again thank the organizers, the audience, beautiful audience whom I'm not able to see. I really thank all of you for your patience. And of course, I thank my seniors, Dr. Tyagi and Dr. Patra, and my wonderful colleagues and collaborators, without whom some of these works may not be possible. And again, thank you all. Technology makes it possible, but it is the people who make it happen. So with all these beautiful quotes and words, I wish each one of us a better energy conservation. Happy Energy Conservation Day.
Um, Thank you, ma'am, for giving your impeccable presentation. How you tailored your message for the participants and captivated them from the beginning of your presentation to the end was absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Have you stopped sharing?
Yes. Yes.
Now I've shared. Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, we have a few questions raised by our participants in Zoom platform and YouTube live stream.
Okay. Just a second. Can you just help me with that questions?
Yeah. I'll just read out the questions, ma'am. Can I read out the questions?
Yeah, sure. Question.
Yeah.
Just a second.
We have a few questions from what the participants have given. So first question is, what according to you will be the best practice of energy conservation, ma'am?
Well, not to sound too traditional or too old, maybe the minimum use, maybe that's the one thing. And also learn that we are going for an option. We should not forget the mistakes we made earlier, because energy conservation is a term coming due to the fact that we made some mistakes. Of course, this is my personal view. And when we have excess of something, or when we have things we take for granted, we never think of it. So maybe energy conservation should be part of our daily life. Like, of course, I'm sure most of you youngsters may be getting irritated when a mom says switch off the light, etc. But without them realizing, maybe they are also helping. And energy conservation is whenever, when you know the options, when you know which is better, it is better to opt for that. Like suppose when they say nuclear energy is a good option for you, I think the first step is to remove some bias and go ahead with a positive attitude. I mean, this is what I feel, because there are still a lot of people who have this perception and regarding the nuclear thing. And I know with time it will take a better aspect in people's mind. But I feel small things from our house will go the best practice to energy conservation. Maybe it's a very highly personalized answer, but I don't think of any other answer. Maybe one of your professors can give a better answer, I think.
Yeah. Okay, ma'am. Shall I move to the next question?
Sure.
Yeah. What are the challenges associated with the disposal of nuclear waste?
Good question. Very technical question. You're from which branch over? I thought maybe the subject is open to many non-chemistry people also, no? So see, challenges is first, I will just answer in brief. The disposal of nuclear waste is, you don't just dispose it, okay? You have to first trap it into something safe, and only then they go for disposal, that to underground disposal. This trapping is known as what is known as vitrification. If you search in Google, you will get the complete complete details, okay? Vitrification. My example of boroaluminosilicate for removal of thorium and uranium, that came from the fact that these gases are used for vitrification. Okay, vitrification word is used only for nuclear waste immobilization. They call it as immobilization, is called as vitrification because of the process. So whoever asked this question, I can just suggest, please go to the Google, because this forum, many may not be interested. I'll just tell you, they have developed large number of processes. Of course, the challenges associated with each one of them is different, because vitrification, leaching can be one aspect. So their challenge is to make a better glass, wherein the leaching under extreme weather conditions will be reduced. So challenges are depending on which process you adopt. There can't be one single challenge. So I told about vitrification because that is carried out on BRC, and there are large number of studies carried out to improve this. So if you go, it's an open subject. You can always discuss with me also later also if you want, because I don't want to bore the rest of the audience. So the challenges are like in vitrification, the challenge, what we are successfully overcoming is how to make the glass non-leachable. because in vitrification, you immobilize the waste along with the glass material. And so it should not leach out. After some time, it should not come out. So that is the challenge they are all overcoming successfully. So right now, I just want to restrict to that. If any particular question particular, you can always contact me. I'll discuss in detail with you then. Yeah?
For the next question, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Where is the nucleus of an atom to be radioactive?
Okay, see, as you saw from that binding energy curve, if it is a light nuclei, it doesn't become radioactive. Radioactive is nothing but first the nucleus is bombarded with your neutron, and then it reaches a kind of an excited state. See, a chemistry student will know the concept of atomic absorption spectroscopy and all, wherein we have something called absorption due to excitation and emission. Okay, just imagine like that. When my nucleus is lightweight, it doesn't absorb the neutron. So what happens is basically when my uranium is bombarded with neutron, the neutron is first added or it is put into the nucleus, and that causes it to get excited to a higher state, and then it breaks down. That is what is fission. The basic principle of fission is your nucleus has to first bombard into the nucleus, your neutron has to bombard into the nucleus of an atom. Unless it reaches the nucleus, this will not happen. So it goes to a higher state of activity, which is tend to be known as a excited state, but in our nuclear words, it is called as radioactive state. And then it breaks down. Then it can give you the alpha or beta or even the gamma reactions along with some other nucleus. So it will be active. First requirement is it is to be higher than iron, heavy elements. So normally we have uranium, plutonium. These are the elements which are called fissile. And thorium, if you see, it is called fertile. Sorry for others because I'm using a technical term. Otherwise, I didn't know how to explain. Fertile is that particular element, thorium, even though it is very heavy, it still will not become radioactive itself because its binding energy is high. So what it will do, it will break down into something else, which will be radioactive. So that is why it has a tendency to produce fissile material. So thorium is known as fertile material. So just because it is heavier than iron doesn't mean it will be radioactive always. Even there, its binding energy and neutron cross-section, absorption cross-section is very important. So these all parameters decide whether a particular nucleus will become radioactive or not. Actually, it's a bit too technical. So I'm sure whoever has asked must be from that field. So you have to understand the concepts of fertile and fissile nucleus. If you just see that, you will understand further. Okay. And maybe in a more focused interaction, we can always talk this in detail. Because this particular I prepared from the point of view of a general audience. For a more focused, I can discuss in detail regarding energy and all those things later.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question. How should be a radioactive substance be handled?
A very good question. First and foremost, there are special boxes known as glow box, which are operated at negative pressures and which don't allow any radioactive to come out. So you can't just hold the radioactive substance within your normal working atmosphere or lab. Like I told you, for my CR39 film, I would not have been able to use it in my lab if it was radioactive. So all the conditions are done in separate systems known as glow box. It's called GLOVE box, and it should be done with remote handling or with expertise handling. That is where the training of personnel become very important. So radioactive substance should be handled under negative pressure, wherein even if there is a leak, it will not come out, and there will be continuously pressure into it, so that you don't get the air to come, let the radioactive come out. So it's known as glow box technique. Okay, it's called glow box.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question. Yeah, next question, ma'am. How to control nuclear fission reaction?
Yeah, like I think many are asking very specific topics. I'll just tell you. See, nuclear fission reaction is controlled in nuclear reactor using what is known as the moderator and the control rods. And of course, to remove the heat, they use the coolant. So it you can't carry out it unless you have these things. Nuclear reactor has got a moderator because it reduces the energy of your neutron to ensure that it goes in a controlled manner and bombardment occurs. And your there is something called poison rod. If your fission reaction goes out of control, it will suddenly consume all the neutrons, and then your fission will be stalled or stopped for some time. So these are the features of a reactor. So you can always understand that a reactor has these features to ensure the nuclear fission is controlled. You cannot have a nuclear fission reaction in a lab kind of setup, first and foremost, because of the radioactivity. Second, you cannot control the neutrons, and if the neutron energy and the number are not controlled, your fission reaction becomes uncontrollable. There are some terms known as critical, supercritical, and subcritical. I'm again sorry to the others because I'm becoming again too technical. So these parameters tell you how to control a nuclear fission reaction. Okay.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next question, which reactor is the most efficient one?
That's now actually, see, it depends on what the reactor is made for. Okay, and what are the components? See, I told you there are different types of reactors starting from boiling water. Maybe I didn't explain in detail all those things. Pressurized heavy water. So each is a development of the other. Okay, so it will not be really correct on a part to say which is efficient, which is not efficient. Like research reactor, I may not be interested in power. I just need the radioisotopes for my production. So there, my power is not my major concern. But if I have a power reactor, of course, there are reactors working on different principles. So from my side, I would just like to tell whoever had this doubt, there is nothing called the best reactor or not so good reactor. Each has its challenges, each has its best, and it depends on what you want. See, if I want a research reactor, I would be happy with a lower power. So I will not go for very high kind of fuel or enrichment as stated. But whereas if my aim is power, then the modifications come in this reactor setup design itself, which I'm not an expert, but I can just tell you in brief, so that they can improvise on these aspects. So, so what I feel is it's better not to take as which reactor is most efficient. Of course, I myself will not be able to tell you. Each has its own plus and minus and advantages. And as you can see, over the years, each reactor is a learning process for the next. That is how we have to understand. When we are taught these reactors, we always learn to appreciate how each reactor or the experience with one reactor helps in making the other next reactor a better unit for with better efficiency. Of course, for power, it is a power reactor, and for research isotope, we need a low power reactor. This is the answer I think I can give the best. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question, ma'am. Is nuclear energy a green energy?
Yes, one of the advantages which was associated with this. See, the fact green is depending upon your emissions. And as far as nuclear energy is concerned, the emissions are as near as zero. Forget about unfortunate conditions, accidents and all. But in a technology which has been established, well established in India, yes, nuclear energy is one of our green options, which is going to be sustainable for a longer period. Definitely, it's a green energy.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question, last question. Is isotope production harmful?
Can that person be more clear? What does it mean? Isotope production harmful? I didn't understand the question.
Don't know.
Okay, I think I will.
It was posted in the YouTube, ma'am. That's
okay. I will try to understand. Okay, I'll just try to understand. See, isotope production we are using for medical purposes. Okay, like cancer treatment and brachytherapy, etc. They are all based on the isotopes produced in BRC. So producing an isotope for a medical application is the main purpose of a research reactor. So whoever asked that, I would like to say that isotopes are being produced specifically for medical applications, even sterilization, etc. So your question, I don't know if you are asking directly if isotope production is dangerous. The answer is no. But if you meant something else, then I'm sorry, I didn't get your exact question. But isotope production is used for medical applications like sterilization, brachytherapy, etc. It's a large field in itself. It's a large field.
Thank you, ma'am. One more question
Yeah,
from the
sure,
chat
sure.
box. What is the main purpose of nuclear energy and conservation of energy?
Very good. Nuclear energy and conservation of energy is first and foremost, like I said, it helps us to keep our fossil fuels intact, or rather reduce our dependence on that. So like in the beginning, I said, see, when I have 3-4 options, my wastage or my usage of one particular resource will reduce a bit. Thereby, I always stand a chance of having different options for a longer period. And nuclear energy and nuclear people believe that nuclear energy is going to be sustainable mode, because the basic, as I told, the last stage of our reactor program is based on a deposit in Kerala, which is in a large amount. And people from Kerala are really happy that they are going to play a major role. And when that comes, that India will surely have no deprivation of the resources. So that is the main belief of the nuclear people of India.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Chandrakala, ma'am, can proceed.
Now, this is the time to felicitate our chief guest, Dr. Jayashree Ramkumar, Scientific Officer, Analytical Chemistry Division, BARC Mumbai, with a Certificate of Excellence.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, I'm really honored and humbled. And like I said before, it's an honor to always be in front of the teachers, because their blessings always count. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Madam, on behalf of Bhaktavatsalam Memorial College for Women, we are indeed very much privileged to have you with us today. Though I'm a commerce professor, I was really happy to look into your presentation.
Oh,
and what an amount of knowledge, that you have shared with us. It was a privilege, madam, to have you with us. And definitely, I think our departments will function on the guidelines that you have taught us. And we are very happy to present you with a certificate of excellence. And we are very much honored by your presence and your presentation. Kindly accept our certificate of excellence, madam. Thank you so much.
It's a honor.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's a privilege. Thank you. It's nice
Thank you,
being
ma'am.
with you all. And I'm sure some of your faculty can even apply for BRNS, and we can keep interacting. Definitely, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
Gratitude makes sense of your past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Thank you is such a prayer that cannot be seen or touched. It must be felt by heart. I feel honored and privileged to get the opportunity to propose a vote of thanks in such a distinguished and intellectually stimulating virtual gathering. I, on behalf of the organizing committee, convey deep regards and hearty thanks to our Honorable Vice Chairman, Dr. K. Maragadamani, whose vision has engraved us to the perfection. We are very grateful to place on records our sincere thanks to our Secretary, Sir, Dr. S.P. Rajagopalan, Bhaktavakshala Memorial College for Women, for his constant encouragement and support. I wish to extend our generous thanks to Dr. K.N. Dhanalakshmi, Principal in Charge, Bhaktavakshala Memorial College for Women, for felicitating our chief guest with a certificate of excellence. I would also like to thank Mrs. S. Mangai, Vice Principal, Head, PG and Research Department of Biochemistry, and the convener for giving the welcome address. I am very thankful to Dr. R. Indra, IQSC Coordinator, Head, BCom CS, for her wonderful support. My sincere thanks to Dr. N.S. Sangeeta, Convener, and the Head, Department of Chemistry, for introducing our chief guest. Today, my words are not enough to express our gratitude to our former principal and associate secretary, Madam Dr. C.N. Ishwari, who graces us with her presence. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to our chief guest, Dr. Jayashree Ramkumar, Scientific Officer, Analytical Chemistry Division, BARC Mumbai, for enlightening and enhancing our knowledge with our commendable perspectives. I'm also much thankful to all the organizing committee members, teaching and non-teaching staffs for their constant support to shape the webinar. We express our deepest gratitude to all the participants for joining today's webinar and whose presence has made this event a successful one. Last but not the least, thanks to Almighty God for making this day a memorable one. I once again thank each and everyone for making this program successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear as mentioned in the invitation, a participation certificate will be granted to all the participants within a week. We look forward to bring you even more webinars in the future. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Jayashree ma'am.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so
Ma'am,
much.
I would request all of you to just kindly unmute your video for a second so that we can take a photograph, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
And ma'am, I'm Mangai. I would like.
Hi. Hello,
ma'am. The presentation was so very informative and it was very clear.
Thank you.
So that, I mean, don't feel that it was too technical, ma'am. Even the other, other discipline students would have understood what you conveyed today.
As well as the teachers, Mangai.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
As well as the teachers.
Yes, as well as the teachers. So it was that very informative and it was very clear, ma'am.
All liked it. I'm very happy you all liked it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I too would like to add my appreciation, Dr. Jayashree.
Thank you, ma'am. You can call me Jayashree.
Okay.
Always call me Jayashree. Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for joining, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye, all of you. Good night.
Bye,
Bye,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Ishwari ma'am, for joining us.
Yeah, sure. I knew
We
people
can have a meeting, ma'am. We can have a meeting now.
meeting.
After a long time, no? So we'd like to have a meeting with you.
How many meetings we used to have.
Good old days, ma'am. Good old days of having meetings.
Don't worry.
No
days are
such
good
meetings now. No such meetings, ma'am.
You will have.
Sangeeta, I think you can stop recording, Sangeeta.
Yeah.
Once everything recorded.